What's up, Soul of the Bang? Sorry it's taken me so long to get back to you with this movie review about The Equalizer, Denzel Washington, 2014. I downloaded the movie the other night, checked it out. You had asked me to review the movie and to comment specifically about the brutal, deadly martial arts techniques that are used in that movie in comparison to, say, the limited arsenal that a guy in MMA and cage fighting can apply. Alright, so my take on the movie is that this is really Denzel Washington playing a 1980s kind of Steven Seagal character. It was in a way a classic hero movie. You have a protagonist who is a widower, retired from some previous history that we don't learn until quite a bit later in the story. He's very neat, very orderly, and very interested in personal development. We see him right off the bat in the first 20 minutes of the film really giving of himself to help other people become better themselves or improve themselves. You have this guy who's working with him at something like a Home Depot, and this guy's overweight and wants to become a security guard, but there are weight restrictions. And so you see Denzel's character, Robert McCall, helping him out, making sure his diet stays on track, and like going to the lunchroom to make sure the guy's eating good, and getting some fitness in there for him and that kind of thing. We see him spending his evenings reading classic literature in a small diner where there's also a customer who regularly comes in here who's a prostitute. And there's a Russian prostitute, sex slave basically, and he's interested in helping her be whatever she wants to be. He's kind of filling her mind with these kind of ideas. He's a guy who's, he's a wholesome, good person, and he is interested in helping other people in need. These are kind of classic traits of the hero, and soon enough something comes along to interfere with the world he's living in, with the good stuff that he's got going, that he's trying to help people with. What happens is some of these Russian mob guys that are the pimps of this prostitute basically find her with him, take her away, beat her up, and hospitalize her. And so now there's a problem. He wants to deal with it. So what he decides is he's going to pull all of his savings, which is like $9,800, go to these guys, these Russian mobster guys, and offer it to them to buy her freedom. So he does that. It looks like they might even agree to it, but then they get greedy and they're saying like, well, okay, this is for 1 month or something like that, or 6 months. I can't remember what they said, but they got greedy. And at that point, he very brutally kills the four of them in the room with their own weapons. He just turns it on and snaps, and this is one of the first martial arts sequences, and it's pretty awesome. So this goes on, and then the higher ups hear that their four henchmen got killed, and the one big mobster guy in Moscow sends basically like his hitman to come out and find out what's going on and settle whatever it is that's happening with his. They think maybe it's some other rival gang doing this that attacked the four. So Anyway, he comes out and more stuff starts happening. We see that the guy, the overweight guy that Robert is helping to become a security guard to make his weight, his mom owns a restaurant or something like this, and there's some crooked cops that are, you know, forcing his mom to pay them money and stuff otherwise, you know, for protection. And they've even like burned part of her restaurant down to kind of prove a point and this kind of thing. And so the guy has left Home Depot and he's working with his mom. And so again, Robert McCall decides he's going to do something about this. He tracks down the two cops that are doing the shakedowns and basically beats the heck out of them, forces them to return all the money that they've ever taken from this woman, and he gets some recorded evidence, testimonies of their indiscretions to hold against them as blackmail, this kind of thing. So he's righting injustices. He's creating the equalities. He is the equalizer. Then, you know, eventually this Russian hitman guy figures out, you know, that this is his problem, that this guy is his problem. And so it's going to be a head-to-head between these two. And at this point, Robert McCall goes to meet an old friend. And so here's where we find out his background. He's actually an ex-Green Beret lieutenant colonel turned CIA, and now retired and just trying to live his life quietly, peacefully, and not have that be a part of it anymore. It's kind of a vow he gave his wife on her deathbed, kind of a thing. But the world is, you know, forcing him to be who he is. It's kind of a Rambo-esque sense to it, you know, that he has to do this. He can't get away from it. It's also very, very strong Steven Seagal, to me, very, very strong Steven Seagal overtones. In fact, I think the whole movie is, you know, in bits and patches are could be pieced together from old Steven Seagal movie plots. Up to and including using a microwave as a bomb. And, you know, it just reminds me of like Casey Ryback, Under Siege, the guy who's just a lowly cook, you know, but in this case Robert McCall is just a lowly Home Depot salesman guy, you know. And so goes to war against this Russian hitman guy. Things go down in the Home Depot itself at night with some of the employees, including the fat security guard. And then, of course, Robert McCall is able to take out all the Russian guys one by one with tools, you know, weapons improvised from the tools that are in the Home Depot. And then he himself goes to Moscow to take care of the real big head honcho guy and, you know, kill the people that are guarding him, and then gets him to electrocute himself. So, I don't know, to me, like, as far as the movie and the plot and all that is concerned, it's a good action film. There's stuff in there that doesn't make sense. You know, there's a one time where he coerces a crooked cop by like trapping him in his car in the garage and making him almost have carbon monoxide poisoning. But then the guy relents, and so he takes Robert, you know, to another, I think it was a bank or something, to do something. Like, by this time he's well away from the car and the threat and stuff, and it really seems pretty incredible to me that he would keep going along with Robert's interests. Also, there's a part where McCall like blows up a whole freighter ship full of Russian mobster stuff with bombs that he's made. I don't know, some aspects of it seem really, really far-fetched. But it is, like I said, it's basically like to me, it's very much like a 1980, late 80s, early 90s Steven Seagal film. Um, in fact, this is right up to and including the way that the martial arts are used in this film. Because yes, they are brutal, improvised, on the spot, deadly stuff that's used in the fight scenes. And it was fast paced, like really fast paced, close quarters. It is very much reminiscent of Steven Seagal's use of Aikido in movies, where things are moving so quickly, and he does use improvised weapons on the spots in the scenes in the old Steven Seagal movies. It's really a lot like that. So I think we have, as far as the martial arts stuff, in fact, the whole genre of the movie, up to and including the way that the martial arts sequences are directed, really we have Steven Seagal to thank for that. Now, those kind of, there's only so many things you can do to the human body. And all of it, I was recently reminded by my friend, one of my friends, that all of it just falls under at a high level, falls under the category of jiu-jitsu. And so it's really, and that goes for what Steven Seagal is doing, because Aikido is derivative of jiu-jitsu. That goes for what's happening in this film, and in many other films, especially the films that are now using KZ and defense labs and these kind of things. This is just high-level jiu-jitsu, really, when it comes right down to it. And there are things that you would, techniques and strategies and approaches that you would take in that high level that are brutal and deadly and could not be used in a cage. So when there's guys that say, I practice this martial art, this style, and somebody will say, prove your style, that it works, and they're like, well, I can't really, go into a cage and prove it because it's very deadly. That kind of discourse has been really criticized by guys like Brock Lesnar and Joe Rogan and this kind of thing. And in some respects, I see where they're coming from, because they're looking at some of the very flowery form heavy kung fu styles from China. But it's not always the case with everything. There are some techniques that are very brutal and deadly and effective. I mean, even in the UFC, we see that there's been a lot of eye gouges that have been happening recently. Some say because of the way that the gloves are, that they force your hand to be open. And so you see a lot of inadvertent eye gouges. And one little thumb in the eye can end a fight. That can be it. They have to call the fight. It has to be forfeited because of one little, inadvertent finger in the eye. Now you take that and you think there's guys who train specifically to target the eyes with their fingers. This is the kind of the thing that there is a reality that there are techniques and there are approaches that are too violent, too deadly for the cage. There are. We don't have to be in denial about that. It doesn't say, that's not to say that MMA, it's not to put MMA or the cage fighters down or anything like that. In fact, my opinion of what's gone on in MMA and the UFC and stuff like this over the last decade has been that it's been a huge, the martial arts have taken a huge gain from the testing of different techniques, different styles, different training methods, and all of this in that arena of the cage. Everybody's benefiting from this, and so I think we all need to be very respectful of the people who are going in there and making those sacrifices for our group learning, and I am certainly myself, I am respectful of them for doing that, for making that sacrifice, because they are putting themselves at danger. It's just that, having it be a sport, you don't want these fighters who are making those sacrifices and putting themselves in harm's way to be overly at risk of being permanently crippled or dead. And so there's things that you can't do. You can't do, strikes on the back of the head and 90-degree elbows and soccer kicks to the head and knees to the face when somebody's down, and there's eye gouges and groin shots, and there's a lot of stuff that a lot of rules in the combat sports that they're there because they should be there, because the fighters are already taking enough risk. They're already going as violent as they can without putting themselves at a real serious risk of permanent crippling or death. So you can still have respect for that, and you can still have respect for them, and you can still have respect for all of the learning that's coming out of the sports fighting, and you can still have respect for the combat efficiency of what's coming out of the MMA community, without saying that, or trying to deny that there's also these other brutal techniques and deadly things that can't be used there. And denying that is just as bad, I think, as denying that that there's nothing good coming out of the UFC, that it's just sport and it's not martial art. It is martial art. So anyway, that's my take on the movie. That's my take on the use of that high-speed, brutal, improvised, gut-level, deadly jiu-jitsu stuff. So hope that helps and answers the question. Any other questions you got for me, just keep shooting them my way.